Hello, you noble people. My name is the Noble, and in this video, I'm going to be doing a Deltarune Chapter 5 theory on Sans. This is my first theory since Chapter 5 has released, and I'm very excited. This has kind of been something that has been floating around for a little while. I've already seen people make some shorts, like Sibbles and Mystic Slime have already kind of covered this. That being Sans' interactions with the ice cream stand, both in the weird route and as well in the normal route. It is an unskippable cutscene, and I decided I want to make a theory video. Now, while you do probably already know the basic structure, this theory video is going to be more than just setting out and saying like, oh, this is kind of interesting. This is actually going to be a full theory video, and it did kind of take a little while, so you probably are going to know more of it and a more bulk of it, but I'm very proud of this theory video. I do want to preface before we hop in, this will require some knowledge of Undertale. I know some people aren't necessarily Undertale fans or haven't played Undertale. I know a lot of people are coming from just Deltarune, so at least make sure you do have some knowledge of Undertale before we hop into this theory. But without further ado, let's hop in. In Undertale, if you get Sans' keychain and are able to unlock the basement, you'll be able to go in and read a bunch of random stuff in like this portfolio type thing, and it says there's a bunch of pictures of people you don't recognize, and it seems that Sans is happy. After you go back when the game is completed, after you talk to Azriel, there's now a photo album, and it will show photos of Sans with everyone else, including you and all your friends after the pacifist route. However, in around 2018, in around the Switch, there was an extra little bit that has a card sticking out from the binder with 3 poorly drawn pictures on it, smiling, written "Don't forget," which is the biggest motto of Deltarune. And we finally have confirmation that this moment was Susie writing down everyone's names for the ice cream, which is something that cannot be skipped in the normal route or the weird route, meaning it has to happen. However, one big difference between the weird route and the normal route is that Sans gives Chris bread. Now, this kind of is played off as just a joke for ice cream sandwiches, but if you look further and interact with the bread, the description says a loaf of bread, it tends to leave crumbs, as in a breadcrumb trail to lead someone somewhere for them to follow the path. Now, people have made their own theories, ranging from just Susie discovering a breadcrumb and finding out what happened to Chris and Noelle and trying to do her own thing to save them, or it going all the way to the "I remember your genocides, Sans genocide boss battle, we have to fight him super hard" a boss thing. But I want to provide a different perspective, and that is, I think Sans is purposely trying to do kind of what Susie is doing. In fact, I think he's trying to fix or stop whatever Deltarune will become. In the Undertale genocide boss fight, Sans has a lot of interesting dialogue that implies he is not of the Undertale world or is part of a bigger picture. And one of the biggest ones is his dialogue revolving around timelines. Him saying a massive report in a timeline anomaly, time-space continuing, timelines stopping and starting left and right, and saying that it is all our fault, the player's fault, for manipulating the timeline and trying to do the different routes of the game. One of the most interesting ones is Sans saying he gave up trying to go back a long time ago. And then the immediate next line, him saying the surface also doesn't appeal to him anymore either, meaning what he wants to go back to isn't necessarily the surface, but his own world, a world that might be Deltarune. Now, this is probably one of the things you have probably heard the most. We kind of instantly thought this was the case since like chapter 1, that these dialogue fights and all the stuff revolving around Sans kind of meant that Sans was Sans Deltarune, not Sans Undertale. However, I want to go back to that first dialogue that I had talked about. The timelines anomaly and timelines stopping and starting randomly and it being all of our fault until suddenly everything ends. That, while it can be read in the moment of the genocide fight, is us erasing save files, us saving over, trying to see the new things, becoming the Flowey of Undertale. It can also read of us doing that exact same thing with different games. And this might be Sans also referencing the weird route all the way back in Undertale. Now, I do want you to bear with me for a little bit, as I'm going to kind of go into my own kind of personal headcanons for a little bit for this theory that don't have much groundwork, but they still do make sense. One of the biggest theories people have is Deltarune is either a sequel, prequel, alternate universe to Deltarune and Undertale. They're separate, but they're also linked some ways. Obviously, they have similar characters, but they're always going to be joined together in some way. In my personal opinion, I think Sans is that link. Sans is the only character that not only feels out of place in both Deltarune and Undertale, but is the only character in Deltarune that seems to be able to do some weird stuff, if that makes sense. He still has his like teleporting funny gimmick. In Undertale, he does that normally, but in Deltarune, you'll like walk up and suddenly he's in a different room. He'll move alongside. It's obviously played as a joke, but obviously there is more stuff going on with Sans. But in the Deltarune world, he shouldn't be able to do that, assuming that his teleportation power would be something that he would get if he was from Undertale. Unless this is Sans from Undertale and he moved to Deltarune. And that is my headcanon. I personally think that this is an Undertale Sans. At least, maybe not the one we know, but a Sans from Undertale that was able to achieve his goal of actually getting back to Deltarune. And being Sans, he would probably want to stop whatever would potentially threaten or stop him from actually being able to live in this world. I've kind of had a kind of weird hunch around not seeing Papyrus. And not only is Papyrus not here, but he's also never mentioned by name. Sans always refers to him as his brother, and makes me believe either Papyrus is not actually technically in Deltarune yet, and Sans is just kind of waiting to bring him to Deltarune, or there is something else going on. And the fact that Sans doesn't really care about what is going on with Chris, Susie, and Noelle in every other route except the weird route is interesting to me. The idea that Sans is trying to keep you on track. That Sans, while may not pose a huge threat like he would in the genocide route of Undertale, he is still trying to be an observer. He's still trying to be the kind of judge that he does in Undertale. He's trying to see where you are leading out. And when I go back to that line in his genocide fight, and he says, "That's your fault, isn't it?" about the timeline stopping and starting, he's not talking to Kara or Frisk. He's talking to us, the player. We're the one who messes with the timelines and saves and stuff. And one of the biggest things in Deltarune compared to Undertale in terms of gameplay is the fact that we have 3 save points. Now, having 3 save points doesn't immediately mean anything in the grand scheme of like a basic game layout. It's just a normal, better improvement over Undertale to have multiple save spots. Especially because we have the weird route, we have the normal route, and with the addition of Chapter 5, knowing that the weird route is not going to kind of appear, or we can kind of soft end the weird route for a little bit, means we're probably going to have what people are calling the sword route, meaning you're probably going to have all 3 files full of different routes that you're going to want to take. However, one thing that a lot of people have kind of been noticing and kind of freaking out about is the fact once you finish the weird route and actually fully complete it and get the insert chapter 7 side B message and it exits to the title screen, it permanently changes your game. If you open up Deltarune in GameMaker and look at the code, a variable of side B complete in your DR file gets changed and has side B state complete. It's also interesting to note that this also has a variable called ARG0, which obviously relates to maybe the Spamton sweepstakes are ARG and everything going on with that and Noelle's place in that stuff. But what's even bigger to mention is that it changing this and now marking it complete could just be a tiny thing, like it marking that you've completed it because you don't actually get to save in Chapter 5 once you complete the weird route. But it permanently changes not only your weird route save file, but the entire save file data of the whole game, and it cannot be undone at all. As soon as that is completed, any chance to try and correct that or fix it goes newt. The only way to reverse this would to literally get a new copy of the game on a different account or system. This goes back to Sans, full circle, as we are literally doing what Sans says in his genocide dialogue all that long ago. We're manipulating multiple timelines, not just one single save file. We're manipulating all 3 of them at the same thing. And like Sans says, we're gonna keep manipulating it until everything ends. Now, obviously, am I stretching in the meaning of words? Yes. Am I 100% confident in this? No. Do I think it's cool, the idea that Sans is still acting like his Undertale self and trying to police and judge and trying to protect this world? Yes. Do I think we're gonna have a big genocide fight? No. That is not what this video is about. I even talked about that earlier in this video. I personally feel like there's too much evidence that this world not only means a lot to Sans, but there's something going on with this world and with timelines and something. And I feel like whatever happens here is going to impact Sans later, or he is going to be impacted. Something has to happen. There's so much going on. And I, for one, cannot wait for it. But that's going to be all for me. I loved making this video. I had a hugely fun time making this video. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe. I do plan on trying to do some other theory videos, maybe even reacting to some other people's theory videos. I am super in the theorist mood right now. When it comes down to theorizing, Chapter 4's theorizing era, I'm going to be honest, I didn't really care too much about, simply because we kind of knew what Chapter 3, I didn't really care about Chapter 5's theorizing era that much, simply because we kind of knew what Chapter 5's era was going to be. I really liked our Chapter 3 and 4, because we could kind of infer some stuff, but it wasn't like fully set in stone. But we have, for the first time since we had the gap from chapter 1 to chapter 2, we finally have a huge, like, ginormous gap in knowledge that we don't know where this game is going. And I, for one, cannot wait to see what theories are getting popular. There's so much more going on. I personally kind of want to try and do a theory about Image Friend. I actually haven't, like, done too much research into that character besides some surface level stuff, and I would really like to delve into that and see if I can make my own theory about that. But yeah, thank you so much. Stay noble. I see you in the next one. Bye.